The feeling of doing something different and daring for the first time is the stuff that boring people dream of. To do the same thing over and over can be comforting and safe, but there is no challenge. I wanted to make a change, so I decided to plan and take a life of another. I watched several movies, TV shows, and documentaries about murders and disappearances that were unsolved. I noticed that the reason why most murderers got caught is that they forgot to be careful, believing that they are invincible. One of the movies gave me the idea of not targeting someone that I know unless I wanted to get caught. I also needed to dispose of the body and the weapons, but most important, of course, was finding a target. I looked around for several weeks and found my target, a widower in his late 30s. I wrote down his license plate, and from there I started my research into his personal life. I found a lot of information about his friends, family, job, etc. I memorized his entire schedule and his hobbies. I felt a wave of excitement every time I found out something new about him. The thing that I was anticipating was when to make my move. Fortunately, the opportunity presented itself quickly. The widower announced on his social media that he was going on vacation in the Rockies. Since I didn't know him, as far as people who knew me were concerned, it wasn't strange for me to take the weekend off. As I drove up the Rockies with my supplies, I felt a sense of purpose. For the first time in my life. I got a cabin and kept my stuff in the car as I checked his social media for where he was. I went out and found him at the lake fishing alone. Without missing a beat, I walked over to him holding the syringe which contained tranquilizers concealed in my pocket. Quickly covering his mouth, I injected him in the neck with the contents of the syringe to make him fall asleep. I carried him back to my cabin, made it look like he was drunk and passed out, and I had brought him back to the cabin to sleep it off. When I brought him back to the cabin, I gagged his mouth and handcuffed his hands behind his back. I went to my car and grabbed all my supplies to set up my area. He woke up at that point when I was almost finished. I dragged him kicking and screaming to the plastic and stabbed my knife deep in his throat. I took a step back to watch him live his last few moments of life. After he died, I grabbed an empty plastic barrel and put his body and the knife inside. I opened the jar containing the acid and poured it inside, gently, to not make a hot mess. His body was dissolving as I cleaned up the area. I moved the barrel to the corner of the room and waited for the body to dissolve and poured the contents somewhere deep in the woods. I dumped the barrel at the dump after washing it out with a hose. I returned home with a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. A few days later, the widower was on the news. His friends filed a missing persons report, and his family was putting up a reward for information that would lead to his location. I had gotten away with it, and I was in the clear.